Hello, hello, hello. We're getting started. We're going to be talking about maximizing play and fun in 2023. It's myself, Gary Ware, and I'm here with Mike Rucker. Let us know in the chat whether you're watching live or the replay. And this is going to be one that you're going to not want to miss because we want to have more fun. So, hello, hello. Here we are. Here we are. Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so well, Gary. I've been looking forward to this. Although dropping the sirens, that's the best.
Yes.
My
So,
wife
yeah.
and I went to Cartagena, and it was an inside joke for us. It was a lovely trip. If anyone's ever been to Colombia, anyways, I digress. But every disco we went to, the sirens were like nonstop, and it was just the best. It's like, yeah, yeah.
Just quick aside, since we've been doing so much stuff on the virtual front, and I've been adapting all these sound effects, now that I'm going in person, I miss them. I need to bring like a little soundboard with me, so as I'm doing these workshops and whatnot in person, I can, hit the cheering and whatnot.
Did you
So
ever see Aziz Ansari did that? I think he did it as like a persona of himself, but he brought a hype man for his stand up, and it is
no
the
way.
most amazing. I meant it. So now, especially because I know you're a lover of comedy like myself,
Yes.
look it up because, yeah, it's just a great idea, and it worked out so well, and it's so bananas.
Woohoo! Yes. So, speaking of like making things fun and playfulness, that is what we are talking about. If you're watching live, thank you for showing up for us. We really appreciate you. And to reward some of you for your support, we are going to be giving away copies of Mike and my book. And you're probably wondering, how do I get a copy of that? And it's very simple. Just engage, ask questions, and at the end, we're going to randomly pick who gets these, and we will be in contact to you to get your contact information so we can send you a copy. And we're going to keep this short and sweet. We could spend all day talking about this, but that sort of
We have,
defeats
I
the
think, a
purpose.
few
I think,
times.
yeah, we spent a long time discussing this. But yeah, it's going to be about 25, 30 minutes. Our main reason here, a few things. One, in case you were under a rock, Mike's book just came out, The Fun Habit. Really great book. Highly recommend that you pick one up, especially if you don't win a copy. It came out, was it 2 weeks ago?
July 3rd. But let's not forget, it's a
January
good.
3rd. January 3rd.
Oh my goodness. I'm still on COVID time.
It's
Yeah.
all good.
And you know what? It's funny because that's when it was supposed to come out. And then due to all the supply chain issues and stuff, they ran out of paper. Can you believe that?
I can believe that. Yeah. When my book came out, there was a delay as well. Yes. So January 3rd, here we are.
And let's
And
not
then
forget, it's a great companion book to another amazing book that you might want to show.
yes. Yes, these two, I I scribbled, I highlighted, I dog-eared so many amazing references. We're just going to give you just a taste of it, and then this Friday, believe it or not, is National Have Fun at Work Day. So hopefully this will give you some inspiration, just to actually make these changes. Before we dive into the actionable tips, I want to turn it over to Mike and talk about like why this is important. Because
The best. This is the best. Oh my
he
gosh,
does a
I'm
really
doing
great job.
like 2 or 3 of these a day, to support the launch, and I'm already at. Yeah, it's too bad we. So I'm at all jokes aside. I think what I was sharing with you beforehand. Not to go from something that's really joyful and us having a lot of fun at work to something a little bit more serious, is that on my book tour, I think, even though I've written about this, I didn't realize how much pain there is, especially in the US workforce, right? A lot of us that are on LinkedIn saw, all the stats that have been showing up the last couple of weeks. I write about it in the book, but it was reaffirmed the United States is second to last with regards to providing leisure to employees, at 10 days PTO for 1 year's worth of work. The only person lower than us is Micronesia at 9 days. But what's more insidious is that we're so burnt out that even the folks that do have the privilege of getting 2 weeks off, 50% of us aren't using it, right? And so we're just not putting ourselves in a position where we're prioritizing leisure time, whether that's for fun, play, or even just self-care. And so that's become really problematic. And I think the main issue here is it's so insidious that it happens over time, and we don't realize that these things that aren't adding any sort of vitality, um, you know, don't allow us to show up the next day as the best versions of ourselves. So paradoxically, when we're able to find ways to prioritize it, everything becomes an upward spiral. And so, essentially that's the thesis of the book, is that we've, whether it's the Puritan work ethic, whether, it's this, knowledge work era where we really don't know where the goalposts are anymore, whether it's the attention economy that, we've kind of gamified the ability to grab our attention, with Slack and email notifications. So we kind of think it's pleasing, but essentially it's making work 24/7. That these things are really eroding both, not just psychological mental health, right? But we're now seeing physiological negative aspects of it. And so we're in need of a radical course correction. I think, that's the message that you and I are trying to share. And certainly work is a key component because it's where many of us spend a majority of our time. I think an easy intervention for any of us to use, I borrow it from Laura Vanderkam, but it's certainly used across the board from practitioners, is looking at that 160 hours, of your time spent in any given week. And most of us are spending a third of it in the workplace. So it's an important, arena to figure out how can we make it not so depleting, so that we do have time for other things, quite frankly.
Yep, I agree. And thank you for. It is the sobering truth, but we got to start somewhere. And for those of you watching, let us know. Are you guilty of this? Do you take leisure time when you are off the clock? Do you intentionally spend time resting? If not, no worries. As Mike mentioned, I feel like we're and this is very, and we were talking about this in the pre-show, very U.S. centric. I know some of our friends, in Europe and whatnot, they're looking at us silly Americans and like, seriously.
Well, and it's not just about vacation, right, Gary?
Yeah.
So you're now seeing, it used to be kind of, said in a joking manner, but now you're seeing the honest, the true output of a 4-day work week, because there are certain countries in the EU practicing it. The other thing that I find quite endearing, that's, Ariana Huffington tried to do it here and she was essentially laughed out of the building, is shutting down email servers at 5 p.m. on a Friday so that people's, just that 48 hours, reserved for renewal that we know is so important is intact. Because we know, like, if we get an email, even if it's not ill-intended by our boss, because that's when they're clearing their plate, we feel this obligation to reply. So having, tools from, behavioral science where it's like, well, if emails aren't sent, you're not going to reply to them. These sort of simple mechanisms become extremely important. And we're seeing it everywhere else except here, which is, we need to figure out, one, why, and then two, obviously do the things that are needed to course correct, because we're also one of the most lonely. Another scary statistic coming out of the APA is that 1 in 4 of us are so burnt out, even if we were given the time, we couldn't do anything with it. I mean, these are really illuminating statistics that are super scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and that deserves the Ben, and in the comments, we're getting a number of people. Yes, guilty of it. Need to do better. We take breaks, but don't necessarily really enjoy it. And hey, you are not alone. And that is one of the reasons why we are here. And I talk about this a little bit in my book. the science is very clear that when you actually prioritize these things, you can be more productive. You are you have a better outlook on life. And common sense is not always common practice, and easier said is not always easier. What was it? How does it go? Easier said than done. And I want to jump into the first thing. Again, is it's very, it seems like a duh thing, but I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and talk about breaks, because yes, with vacation time and whatnot, yeah, you know maybe it's not that easy, because of childcare or
Well, it does
whatever.
come from a place of privilege, right?
Yes.
Some of the, levied criticism, which is I get, is that some of the things that I talk about, especially in the chapter of regarding escapism, do come from a place of privilege, right? Like, some people don't get vacations, so when you say, well, that's what you need to do, I get it. While why sometimes, like, okay, that's great. So, what can you do if you don't have those types of opportunities or privilege? But I think one thing is, um, find out where you can, take some breaks, even if it's as simple as reclaiming your lunch break for yourself, right? So there's going to be some jobs. So my academic research, during my time as a doctoral student was with physicians, and I remember going in there and they're like, so how are we going to build resilience? And I'm like, well, first, they're working 50 to 55 hours, so we're going to need to reduce their workload. And speaking of getting laughed out of the room, right? They're like, okay, well, what's your next strategy, right? And so, but by mandate, at least the one thing we get right here in the US is that people do get breaks, right? And so being able to reclaim those, and using your agency autonomy to try and find joy within the spaces that are given become extremely important. And again, these seem so trivial when you hear them, right? Like, oh, really? I just need to reclaim my lunch break. But if you look about the equity you're building, once you create that as a habit, right, then it really does become this avenue for renewal. And over time, what you'll find, and it doesn't take long, 2 to 3 weeks, that, oh my goodness, wait, now every time that I show back up at 1:30 or 2 p.m., because I've had lunch with a friend, or, for folks that like low arousal activities or might be introverted, because I caught up with a book and I realized, like, oh my goodness, this is my safe space, that they're much better versions of themselves. So, like, yeah, it's a very pedestrian, piece of advice, but it's something that's super powerful, right? After giving a talk about it one time, so I can't claim this for my own, although I'd love to. Someone's like, you know what? I've always done this inherently, and everyone wonders why I come back so joyful. And I realize that it's, I can't take a holiday, but I can take a holla hour. And I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? Right.
Oh, I love that.
And I know in your, what you found as well, like that, how important these things are. That's one of the most important steps to have fun at work, especially in a job where, it might not necessarily be accessible because of what you're doing when you're actually on the clock.
Yes, breaks are essential. And in the comments, want to acknowledge a few things. Nicole mentioned joy in 15 minutes. I like to argue, and we have Melissa that jumped in, that yes, 15 minutes can be life changing, and it's all about the intention. If you have a break and you aren't able to get do something, an activity that is going to allow you to actually step away, and let your brain sort of recharge, then yeah, maybe not. Like, if on your break all you do is maybe scroll through Instagram or check email, I don't think that is going to give you that rejuvenation. However, if you spend that maybe 15, 20 minutes, and as Mike mentioned, you're the type of person that can really, get pleasure from connection and communication. And, maybe you call your grandma, and you have a loving conversation, or maybe something with a coworker. Yeah, that 15 minutes can be life changing. Mike, what are your thoughts on that for the people that are maybe a little bit skeptical on the power of powering up during a break?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to try it, right? Essentially, check in with yourself. Again, the weird thing too is it doesn't happen immediately, so it generally requires a little bit of built equity. One of the stories I tell in the book is a mutual friend. Tanya Katan found herself in this space, where essentially her, people were trying to have fun, what we now call in the literature forced fun, like, hey, let's just go all have lunch together. And she's like, well, I don't necessarily like you guys, right? I think the best, quick aside, the best anecdote I got was from your buddy, Jeff Harry, who said, the main intervention right now is escape rooms. So you're telling me I hate all my employees and now you're going to lock up me in a room with them? That's like so funny, right? So what she did, Tanya, is she just started a walking habit because that's what she found fun, right? And so during her lunch, she reclaimed that and she just took a walk. She's a very curious person. She's actually written a book about, creativity and curiosity, right? And so she would go and explore her area, which is how she found fun. Oh, this is a cool coffee shop. Let me check it out. What happened was that good mood as she got back was infectious, right? And so what became kind of a solo activity, she was able to self-select in folks that she actually enjoyed. And so now it wasn't only just this introverted thing, but she went and, started to make friendships through lunch, through something that she owned because she was doing it. And so the key component here for the geeks like me that need the science, right? It is that autonomy. Like if you believe that you have to do something, then it's not fun, right? But in the studies that I found, what was amazing is even people, as long as it was their own choice that worked through lunch, found that fun because they're like, this is what I wanted to do. And it was generally a project that they had control over, right? So it's that profound, but find out what it is that you want to do, how you want to spend that time, and realize that it's your time. And so, and I think, the kind of happy ending with Tanya is she literally found her partner through walking, right? I mean, this little habit and reclaiming her break turned into, a loving partnership. So I love her story in that regard.
Yeah. And so to Nicole, who mentioned in the chat, sometimes it can be difficult to understand what brings you joy. Because, as an adult, we're often criticized for having fun. That's a childish thing. And so if you're like that, most adults are, and I'll tell an anecdotal story in just a moment. In the book Play by Dr. Stuart Brown, he talks about the different play personalities. And on my site at breakthroughplay.com/play personalities, you can get that list and figure out which one works for you. There are 7 different ones. And with that, he talks about, what does it mean? As we mentioned, what is deemed playful and fun for one person is not the same for another. So what is it for you? Experiment, try a few things out, and just know that it's not like a tattoo. It's not going to be permanent. You can switch it. And so onto the anecdote.
Another thing I'd like to add real quick.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, please do.
Because Stuart's work is amazing, right? And his exercises, I think, are similar to the time audit, things that are really useful tools. Another component of work that I found really helpful was Jeannie Tsai out of Stanford that suggests, that and again, it's a US centric problem, but we've been so overly advertised that high arousal things are fun that a lot of times when I hear someone say that, like, oh, I just don't know what fun is it because, you're looking at all these things on Insta, the influencers clicking their heels on the beach and that doesn't speak to you? Like, for my wife, it's reading a great historical fiction book by the pool, and that's as invigorating to her as me going to a Rage Against the Machine concert. So just because your idea of fun doesn't fit into the US ideal doesn't mean it's not fun. Like, experiment and figure out what fun is for you, and if it doesn't match what you're seeing, don't worry about that.
Yeah, and big props to Nicole is going to commit to figuring that out this week.
Yeah, I think she definitely has some books coming her way.
Woohoo! Love it. And the anecdote that I was talking about, again, about being able to switch things up. I was working with a client, and this happened mid-pandemic, where their idea of fun is travel. And again, when you're in a global pandemic and you're sort of forced to stay home, travel, is out of the option. And unfortunately, she found herself in a lot of depression and anxiety. And so we were, looking through, the different play personalities, and I asked her a simple question. I said, when you were younger, what did you do that brought you joy? And it can be anything. And she this was via Zoom, but she looked right into the camera and she said, I played with dolls, but Gary, do not make me go to the store and buy a Barbie. I'm not. I'm like, no, I'm not suggesting that. And we unpacked that, and we found that at the essence, what was joyful for her was the idea of nurturing. That's how she played, with her dolls growing up. And so I said, is there something else that sparks your curiosity that you could nurture? And she thought about it, and then she thought about gardening. And she's like, yeah, I've always wanted to get into gardening, but I never really thought I had a green thumb. And so what we experimented with, is there something that she could nurture and garden that is low stakes? And she found succulents. And that was the key. And that it started with 2 succulents. And then now I think she has over 250 succulents. She propagates them. And it just started from just being curious. And on her break, she spends time actually reading about succulents. So again, it gives her an intentional way to step away from the work.
Yeah, 2 things there real quick that I've found working with similar folks is, folks that have identified, because I'm not the type to villainize social media. I find it like, Gary, because we follow each other. I share photos of my daughter in her gymnastics meets and sharing them with family and friends that connection means something to me. I don't think that's a poor use of time. It's certainly fun for me. When you look back at that 2 weeks later and I'm like, so tell me one thing you remember seeing. And they're like, I was just kind of scrolling. Like, okay, well, that's a problem, right? And so like a subtle shift of, combining your work with what is it that you like? Well, how about you just now follow folks that are into botanical stuff? For the person I was working with, they really wanted to get back into crocheting. Like instead of following randos, follow people that are really into crocheting. So that's a motivation. And once you get to a certain level of saturation, you want to go back to that activity you enjoy. So I think those things are important. The other thing I would add is sometimes there's so much inherent guilt. And because I'm not a clinical psychologist, I can't get through that. I need to okay, well, you might need help from multiple people. But what I can suggest is that I know that you want to serve. And so maybe you can find your fun contributing to some sort of social cause. In fact, I took my own advice. I really like building. So I'm working with Habitat for Humanity because everyone, there is really cool. And 2, I get to build, which I find fun. And then it's you get that added kind of hit of kindness, which is, fun's great playmate.
I love it. Awesome. I gave you a little spotlight there.
Yeah,
But
I like that.
You finished talking. So, all right. So we talked about reclaiming your breaks, to have a holla hour instead of a holiday. We talked about, thinking about what are things that you're curious about that you can be intentional and explore. And I want to take a moment and, acknowledge all the people who are here. I love all of these conversations that are happening, that we have. Follow those that are doing things that are interested in
Great
learning
advice.
more about. Great advice. Yes, yes, yes. And for those of you watching, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you can commit to? What is something that brings you curiosity? And while I know there's a delay, so it's going to be a moment before it gets to your ears. But want to turn it back over to Mike. You brought up a good point about autonomy and how autonomy can help us bring back that sort of a sense of fun and joy. Can you speak a little bit more about creating an autonomous zone?
Yeah, so I stole this from, or I would say borrowed, because I cite him, uh, from John Cleese. And I think what I saw where people really can create, at least momentary aspects of play at work is this autonomous zone where they have a heady problem, but they allow themselves to turn that into a game where there's this safe space of Like, okay, I'm going to take, whether you're trying to innovate something, whether you're trying to brainstorm something, or whether you're trying to get to a creative solution, I'm going to create a piece of space and time where I get to play with this problem in whatever way, whatever the rules of the game are that I devise, but that there are no wrong answers, right? And so when you're able to do that, then you can get really creative with regards to picking this part out, right? And so you create this space, time, and confidence in your ability to do this. And then if you get it wrong, who cares? Then you just throw it out, right? Because I think so many of us aren't having fun at work because, one of the killers of fun is the outcome, right? When the sole sort of output of what we're trying to do is the outcome. And when we can relinquish ourselves of that, sometimes it's when we get the best solutions. And so creating this autonomous zone where you have complete control over how you attack that problem. Some people find fun in actually approaching the problem as an anthropologist. So you literally remove yourself out and go, okay, if I was from the outside looking in and I'm not going to get my own way, what would be an interesting way to recreate this particular situation in a way that's more pleasurable, and then go back into it and follow your own rules, right? But whatever it is, it's really, these three things: is creating an environment that's fun to play with this work problem, making sure it's time bound, because when things don't have a finish line, that's when inevitably they don't get fun as well. We've talked about that being problematic in knowledge work. And then having the confidence to know that if it doesn't work out, you're not going to get in trouble, because so many of us get so burnt out because we're like, okay, well, what happens if this doesn't work out? Well, for any of us that like to play games, sometimes losing can be the funnest thing, right? I love losing games to my friends and my family. So you being able to create these spaces can be an effective way to have fun at work.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much wisdom there. And I love, again, the part that you mentioned about sometimes.
And John Cleese has a whole video about this, by the way. Maybe we'll, if anyone wants to reach out to Gary or I, we can share it.
Yes.
But it's an amazing video.
Yes. And I want to definitely highlight the part that you mentioned about, failure and losing is not a bad thing. It's just all about the mindset. And when you put yourself in a playful state, you're absolutely right. Yes. When you play games and maybe you make a mistake, you don't just like, all right, I'm done with this, forget it. Like, no, you're like, all right, cool. What can I do differently? And that, I feel
I think
is
you brought
great
up
wisdom.
examples in your own life, right? I remember, I've obviously heard you talk multiple times, and when you were able to relinquish the outcome from your marketing job, that was when some of your most creative solutions came about, right?
Agreed.
And then probably some of your worst, right? Which is great, right?
Yes.
You're just like, okay, that I lost that game, so let's play the next one.
Yes, exactly. And so many things. AC mentioned choosing how to address their work project is a great source of autonomy. Great use there. Nicole mentioned, still mulling over plans for 2023. Going to make finding fun a priority. Yes, please do. It's very important. Yes, and then some more stuff from Melissa. Yes. What about the person that you're? Oh, so she had mentioned as a way to find some things that can spark joy. Who are you envious of? And that's a great reframe. What about it are you envious of? And what do you want to replicate with that? I really like that. So yes, so much great stuff here. Then we got more stuff from AC here. So thank you all for all of your amazing contributions. We're going to start to wind it down. Mike, if we've been talking about a lot. If you can give like one last, like, boom, do this or experiment with this or play with this or whatever the case may be, what would it be just to get people on the right track, on the fun track?
Yeah, I think it really is, for most of it, it's becoming mindful of how you spend your time, right? And so there are a few things to unpack there. Like, are there ways that you can devise your work in a way that, where you can add joyful experiences? So many of us just don't ask that question. So something as simple as a reframe that we've talked about can be that. In any of these talks, I often say that the first step is creating space, because I think for busy people, and again, we said that, we're the worst, with regard, not you and I, but the US working population. And so adding, hey, let's try and find how to make this fun, just an extra thing on your to-do list, kind of falls in the realm of toxic positivity, right? So
Yep.
I think figuring out the constraints within your work environment where you can create the space for fun to thrive is an important first step. So how do you create that space? I think one is really being, and again, this isn't fun per se, but it's a requirement for it to thrive. Figure out what the goalposts are. Especially if you're in a work from home environment, ask your boss, like, hey, I want to start communicating with you. I know you're not a micromanager, but I want to know when my week is over so that I can create this transition ritual, because my personal time, when I'm able to reclaim it and have fun outside of work, I'm really able to crush it at work. And so that's what I find really with regards to the context of work being the most beneficial. Like, how do you create the space of creating a format where when your work week is over? And then how do you devise a transition ritual where you're like, okay, work is over. I feel great about it. I'm going into my personal life rejuvenated. I'm going to have fun there because now I can engage in active leisure, not passive leisure, because I'm so burnt out from work. And guess what? Now I'm in an upward spiral, because when I show up to work the next day, I'm actually able to hit it hard. And so that's what I found to be the most helpful.
Awesome. I love it. Hey. All right, cool. So we're going to wrap things up. I know for me, this has been awesome.
Likewise.
And
thank you.
Love
Carrie.
all of the stuff that is going on. We need to pick some winners here. What do you think, Mike? There's been I'm having a hard time choosing. There's been some really amazing interactions here. Who should get some books?
I think, why don't we just say all of them?
Yeah.
Is it under 10?
Yeah. All right, cool. So you hear your name, send us a message, direct message me or Mike. We'll get your address. We'll send it out too. So
we should make it clear it's the folks that are on live.
Yeah, that are live. So we got Samantha Summerhouse, Etheridge, you're in. Melissa Dinwiddie, you're in. Nicole Johnson, you're in. AC Holmes, you're in. Who else? Flo, you're in as well. And there on the YouTube side, we have so many amazing things. We have Kelly Kessler. So those are our winners. You all get copies of books. So thank you for showing up and prioritizing this. And yeah, we're gonna wrap it down. Like I said, send us a message. I
guess we could. Either we're both easily reachable through our websites, right?
Yes. Yep.
So get a hold of one of us, and we'll make sure you get your books.
Yeah, you'll get your books. And this has been an amazing experience. Thank you so much, Mike. Seriously, if you didn't get a book, it's all good because you can buy it. You can buy it.
Likewise,
where books are
Playful
sold.
Rebellion is so needed. So yes, well, and why I have this opportunity publicly, Gary, thank you so much for the support. It's meant a lot, and I appreciate you, brother. So
yeah, and I appreciate you, Mike. Like these books are so necessary. They're so needed. This has been fun. This has been super playful. So to everyone, go out and play. We will see you on the flip side. Please let us know how these things are doing. Tag us, as you are reclaiming your break and taking your holiday hour and all that good stuff. And we will see you on the flip side. So bye, y'all.
Take care, y'all.